Hello there and welcome to this Blender tutorial. In this video I'll be showing you how to create your own virtual reality scene in Blender, from setting up the camera to rendering it and saving it to a file. So to get started, I have this startup scene here, and I may include a link in the description for this if you want to try this out on your own. But if you have your own scene, that's fine too. So the first thing we're going to need to do is add a camera. I'm going to grab this camera up a little ways and clear the rotation with Alt-R. Then I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis so that it's pointing, I guess, parallel to the grid here. Now, we can enter our camera view and start setting up the camera settings. First, I'm going to adjust these settings here. I'm going to change this to about 1.6 or 7 in meters. I think that's about the height of a human. But then we're going to come over here to the render layer settings. We're going to need to check the views box here, and that's going to enable the stereoscopic effect for our camera. Now we can go over to our camera settings, where we need to change the field of, well, the focal length from millimeters to field of view. We'll change the field of view to 90 degrees. This is going to allow us to get more of our scene in the camera view. Now, since this is a 360-degree render, and we're going to want to see the entire scene in our virtual reality, we're going to need to go over to the panoramic mode and set the type to equirectangular. So now that we have that done, we need to come down to the stereoscopy settings and check the spherical stereo box. Then we can adjust the convergence plane. Now you can see it kind of shifting the blue and red versions of the scene, and well, this plane right in front of the camera is the convergence plane. This is where both the left and right views of the stereoscopic camera are going to converge. So we're going to want to have them converge near the majority of the objects in our scene. Essentially, this is going to be the place where the eyes are most comfortable looking in your scene. So you're going to want to have the main focal point of your scene, or the main object in your scene, within the convergence plane. So now we're ready to set up the render settings. We can go over to the render settings tab and adjust the resolution. We're going to want to set this at a 2:1 ratio, so I'll go ahead and set it at 2048 by 1024 pixels. I'm going to keep it at a low resolution just for a test render, but whenever you go to do your final render, it's always good to have a very high resolution because you're rendering your entire scene. It's 360 degrees. So you're going to want to have it in probably 4K or even 8K. Now that's going to take a lot of time to render, but it's definitely worth it in your scene in the end. Oops. Okay. So now we can come down here to the output settings and change the file format to JPEG, and make sure Stereo 3D is enabled and the mode is set to top bottom. This way we shouldn't have to mess with any settings when we save it later. So now when you enter the camera view and go into render preview mode, you can see the 360 degrees of your scene. Now that I'm going to do a test render, I'm going to enable the second layer in my scene that I had hidden. Now we can come up here and hit render. Whenever you start to render your scene, you'll notice that it's going to render in this this strange red blue kind of transparency, and that is because it is the right and left stereoscopic views put together. You can toggle this view with this button right here, viewing either the left or right camera views. Now, whenever this render is finished, I'll come back and we can go ahead and save our render. Alright, now that our scene is finished, we're ready to save it to a file. But first, you'll notice that it took about 3 minutes to render this scene. We need to keep in mind that when we're rendering in virtual reality, it's having to render the entire scene in 360 degrees, and it's also having to render it twice. This can lead to really long render times for complex scenes, and you're going to have to consider the time it's going to take for you to render it. So if you already have a complicated scene, it's going to take a long time to render. You can probably just double that time, and that's how long it's going to take to render it in virtual reality. So one thing I failed to mention before rendering was noise. Noise does not help the stereoscopic effect in your virtual reality scenes, and you can see this if you render it at a low resolution and then go look at it in a VR headset. One solution to this is in the Render Layers tab, we have a denoising feature in Blender 2.79. If you check this box, it does a relatively good job of eliminating the majority of the noise in the image. I haven't had time to play around with the custom settings in this feature, but there are a lot of good tutorials out there that you can go and do some research with. Now, we can go ahead and save our image by coming down here to Image and hitting Save as Image. I'm going to go ahead and overwrite this existing file. And now you're done. Now you might be wondering how you can go and see this in a VR headset. Well, there is one solution that I have found, and that is a software called Vray. Vray is an app that you can download onto your phone, and if you have an account with them, you can upload your artwork onto their server and then view it on your iPhone or other smartphone. I'm going to leave a link in the description if you're interested in using Vray. There's a good tutorial on it and how to render virtual reality scenes in Blender. I think that's it for this video, guys. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you have any questions or concerns, please leave that in the comments below. Thank you, and I will see you next time.